Well, we've reached the end of another series. Let's see how it all played out. The books take place immediately after each other. Now, I think the reason why they're so close to each other is because there are parts during Eragon and Eldest that imply months are passing by. Especially considering the travel time to get from place to place, not just in the first two books, but in the rest of them as well. I mean, sure, dragon travel is faster, but it still takes time. Having short time jumps in between books makes sense since there are much longer time jumps in the middle of the books. Personally, quick time jumps can be a bit jarring to me. I've said before that I like it when my heroes have some time to take in the adventure that just happened. And I mean, sure, 3 days could be considered enough time, but considering how in both Eldest and Brissinger, things go from 0 to 100 that fast, to me, it just feels like that's a bit much for Eragon here. However, I would like to clarify that to me there is such a thing as too big of a time jump. It's difficult to balance out, but it is possible. Anyways, another reason why I think the time jumps between books were that short is because there is a fierce war going on and evil doesn't stop to rest. Even during the in-book time jumps of days to weeks to months, there's still something going on during that time. There was a good amount of foreshadowing sprinkled throughout the series. Of course, there was the main prophecy, which was Angela's fortune and Solemnboom's advice. However, there were also some small moments, like in Eldest, Murtagh mentioning how he had many hearts. And in Brissinger, when the Razak mentioned that Galbatorix had almost found the name, which we now know was referring to the name of the ancient language. I like that they weren't too obvious to the reader. They also weren't something the reader can gloss over. The common question throughout the first couple books in the series was, how is Galbatorix that powerful if the rules of magic say he shouldn't be? That question, of course, is answered later, and it makes sense. Now, I've talked a whole lot about the world building already, but I want to say one more important thing about it. It feels consistent. Each of the races of the world have their own designated area, including the dragons. Also, we get a good look at each of their cultures. That includes the Urgles, which is something a lot of fantasy readers might not have expected, since at first, the reader might assume that they're meant to be like the orcs from Lord of the Rings, basically the designated evil race. While yes, technically there was an evil race in the Razak, there were so few of them. That and they wanted to be remembered and feared. Honestly, I'm glad that the Razak were so few in numbers specifically, because an army of them would be horrifying to deal with. Now let's talk magic. Each fantasy world has a specific set of rules when it comes to magic, should magic be used in said world. In this case, magic is used through use of the ancient language, which is a language the elves speak. The ancient language basically uses the true name of everything around it. It's also built so that you can't blatantly lie in the ancient language, plus it binds you to your oaths. However, through use of the name of the ancient language, Galbatorix was able to change how the names of things function. This is how he's able to police magic. Now, sorcerers and writers and all that can reach into themselves and use energy from themselves or other places to manipulate the world around them through magic. Galbatorix had a large store of energy from the Eldunari he's captured, since Eldunari contain a vast amount of energy. The energy isn't unlimited, but it is a great store of power. Also, being able to wield the magic within you and use your own energy is the important part. You see, in Brissinger and in Inheritance, Eragon has Rorin try to raise a stone with magic, because Rorin wants to learn how to use magic to help him out in battle, but he can't, because he doesn't have the ability to wield magic. So, yeah, it's not just say the name of the thing and it'll be at your beck and call, it's you have to be able to have an ability to wield the magic that you're using. So, it's not just straightforward, and I think that's very fascinating. One piece of advice that I've read when it comes to magic is that all magic should have a price. Magic shouldn't be too broken to the point where readers can point out plot holes. I'm sure many readers of the Inheritance cycle could point out thousands of plot holes, but to me, I didn't see any when it came to magic. I liked that it was possible to kill yourself through use of too much magical energy. Eragon nearly killed himself trying to create water from dirt. See, this is what I picture mana points or magic points to look like outside of video game logic. The lower the points, the more tired you become. Alright, let's analyze. You've probably been waiting for me to mention this. The Inheritance cycle is very much built on the hero's journey structure. I've mentioned this before in a few of my reviews and even in my series analysis of the Hunger Games. However, in this case, it's a bit more obvious when compared to Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or many other works. So we have our hero Eragon, who was called to adventure since he found a dragon egg that hatched for him. Now he has all the powers that comes with being bonded to a dragon. He has 2 mentors in Brahm and Oramis, and he has to go on a journey to stop Big Bad Galbatorix from destroying the world further. I could throw in a few more bits. We have the princess needing to be rescued in Aria, we have Aragon's quite literal transformation into an elf-human hybrid, and in this case, the refusal of return is where the story ends. Aragon can't go back to his normal life, and he can't stay in Alagasia because it's not safe for the Eldunari and the dragon eggs. And as Angela's prophecy goes, he is never to return. I don't know if that's where he'll be for the rest of the series if the series continues further, but for now, it appears to be the case. Now, another thing that you've all seen before is how Aragon works with his friends. Before you say anything, no, Aragon does not beat his foes with the power of friendship. Throughout the series, Aragon is willing to work with his friends and advise them if needed. He's also willing to accept advice and teachings from them. Contrast this with Galbatorix, who we later learn refuses to make any form of attachments, which likely may be due to his lack of empathy and compassion. I mean, sure, he has Shrukin, but Shrukin was forced into servitude. It's quite possible that if Shrukin was killed off before the final battle with Galbatorix, Galbatorix definitely would have gone on a rampage, but he wouldn't feel the same way he did when his first dragon was killed. It's something to think about. Also, there's the different perspectives from eldest onwards. Aragon slowly gains more power over time. If the perspective had stayed with Aragon, we would have been so used to the idea of our protagonist having magic and being able to use this power that we wouldn't understand what the regular humans are doing, or how they're feeling. This is where Rorin and Nasuda come in. We see how Rorin has to rely on his own strength and smarts to get to where he is. And while Ajihad had prepared Nasuda for her role as a leader of the Varden, she still had a lot to learn. She also had to take matters into her own hands and focus more on what's good for the Varden rather than letting her feelings take over. And let me remind you all that Ajihad was killed by Urgles, yet she let them be part of the Varden and fight for them. She had every reason to turn them away, but if she did that, she'd be dealing with both Galbatorix and Urgles, and that wouldn't be fun. Now compare that with Galbatorix, who told Nasuda that his people feared the Varden because of their alliance with the Urgles and literally every other race in Alagasia. And Nasuda brought up a good response to that. If Galbatorix cares so much for his people, why doesn't he just destroy the Varden right now? He has the power. He can do it. Now he didn't have a good answer for that. He literally could have destroyed them at any time throughout the whole series, but the likely reason he didn't is because he enjoyed hearing about them suffering. He doesn't care about his people as much as Nasuda cares about hers. And these differing perspectives allow the reader to be able to find other characters to relate to. It also adds more variety to the story. With Aragon, we get the typical hero's journey we've all expected, which is fun, and there's a reason why this structure has stuck around for so long. With Rorin, we get a story filled with determination and romance. His whole adventure starts because Katrina gets kidnapped and he needs help saving her. With Nasuda, we get a better insight into what it's like to lead a rebellion and how stressful it can be. Now, while I've already talked about the rules of magic, they tie into how powerful words can be. Simply the true name of a being in the ancient language is powerful enough to bend them to your will if you have the power to do so. And the name of the ancient language bends the entirety of magic itself to your will. Now, it's not just the ancient language that has all the power, though. Think about how Rorin rallied the people of Carvajal to seek out the Varden, or how Nasuda addressed her people and the Council of Elders. Nasuda's words united the races of Alagasia against Galbatorix. Notice that after Eldest, the only race that the Varden are fighting are humans. And sure, it took some time for everyone to get along, but they knew that getting along was necessary in order to save their homes. It's amazing to see how united they all were, not just in battle, but afterwards when Aragon made sure any of them could be riders. Overall, this was a well put together series. It feels planned, and while the time jumps between books could have been a bit longer, I understand why they're built the way they are. And while the world building may be a bit much for some readers, to someone like me who loves learning about world consistency and cultures in new fantasy worlds, it was amazing. And sure, maybe you saw a few plot holes that I didn't, but that's not the point. The point of this story was to experience an adventure and maybe learn something along the way. I'd recommend reading the series from beginning to end. And again, while it might be a bit slow for you, it's still a fun ride. What's funny is that when I last read the series almost a decade ago, I was unsatisfied with the ending and wanted another book. Well, I got my wish just last year. Again, I'm not sure if or when I'll read Murtagh, since I do hold the opinion that all stories need to come to an end, and starting them back up again after a long time can possibly change the series for the worst. But if you've read Murtagh and believe that it still fit the series well, let me know. I might give it a try, but for now, let's let the story end right here. The Inheritance Cycle was a fun read with a fun and interesting world. While it did use the hero's journey structure, I enjoyed seeing it again. If you're looking for a fun adventure while learning about a neat world at the same time, with dragons, this is the series for you. And so endeth series September 2024. I hope to see you guys next year. Happy reading!